welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And over the past couple of episodes, Grant and I have decided that we were going to take a look at a specific deck and the cards within that deck. Grant and I realized that that certain cards make sense to talk about only within a certain deck type, or else so many cards are corner case that it just doesn't make sense to talk about them. I guess Boots from Erebor is our lesson learned there. Like it just makes sense to only talk about Boots from Erebor within a Hobbit or a Dwarf deck. And so we're going to talk about cards that are in the Slippery Sylvan deck. And today, I guess, Grant, what are we going to talk about?
Today we are going to talk about the zero-cost spirit event from Fire in the Night, which is not yet available as of recording this, or has just come out as of recording this.
Right.
Some people may already have their copies, others are still waiting, but it is quicker than sight. Zero cost, as most of the Sylvan events are. It has response. Return a Sylvan ally you control to your hand to cancel a shadow effect just triggered during combat. Now, this effect has to be in response to triggering a shadow effect. It cannot be used preemptively. The shadow effect has to be flipped and is about to go off before you can play this in response. And it's got a brilliant quote from Legolas: "You will die before your stroke fell," which is very, very nice.
Right.
Quote. So, David, what are your thoughts on Quicker Than Sight?
What I like about Quicker Than Sight is it does something in the deck that no other card can do. And so, I think that one of the things that I was down on was for one of the other events that we talked about, which was Island Amid Perils, is that there's Galadriel can reduce threat, and so, more threat reduction. There's no way to deal with a nasty shadow effect in this deck except for this card. Test of Will doesn't work, so you can't use Test of Will against shadow effects, so you're going to have this. And yeah, I get it that you're not guaranteed to be able to you're not guaranteed to have a nasty shadow effect, but there's more nasty shadow effects than I care to imagine in all the encounter sets. So I would rather have this card in my deck than not. And then on top of that, and I've said this for every event, is that it feeds the beast in terms of the Slippery Sylvans. It brings a card up into your hand, and then you can replay it using Thranduil's ability. You can use the Greenwood Archer to ready a hero. You can bring the Nath Guide back in your hand. If you have Galleon, you can bring Galleon up and into your hand and then replay for him the next round. You don't have to, and then that gives you 2 questing right away. And so that whole idea of feeding the beast and being able to do something that the deck hadn't been able to do before this card was released, I think is super, super important. So, I really love this card for that reason. I love the card art with the arrow going through the orc's hand or arm, I guess. And so it's just a phenomenal. In my opinion, this was a card that I didn't know I needed until it was released, and I was like, "Oh, there it is. That's the card. You need to be able to cancel shadow effects without playing Hasty Stroke or something like that." So the point that I really like about this card is that it gives more diversity to that Slippery Sylvan archetype, and it really helps to smooth out the gameplay experience for people. And then you can always recur it back in your hand. If you bring the Weaver back in your hand, you can do this for all the events. You bring the Weaver back in your hand, you replay for it, all of a sudden the Quicker Than Sight goes back on the top, or goes back in your deck. You have to reshuffle. So you can see it 3, 4, 5 times in a game, and it's fine. So anyways, I just really think that this card is phenomenal. Now, against the whole card pool, I don't think that this card makes any sense at all. So, That's just what I think. What do you think about the card against the whole card pool?
Against the whole card pool, it's unique. It is what it is. I mean,
Right.
you've got Hasty Stroke, you've got Gandalf Staff that both deal with shadow effects. Gandalf Staff allows you to obliterate a shadow effect before it goes off. You've got Hasty Stroke to do what Quicker Than Sight's doing for the cost of one.
Mm-hmm.
You've also got Burning Brand,
Mm-hmm.
which when I was playtesting this deck, my partner runs Dwarves with a couple of copies of Burning Brand and a couple of copies of Song of Wisdom. So Thranduil was getting a Burning Brand
Right.
with every gameplay, which meant Quicker Than Sight wasn't necessary.
Right.
But I can still see the need of it in the deck if you aren't running with somebody who is as considerate as my partner.
She's so nice.
Yes, she is.
Well, and let me just address that. The game experiences playing solo versus 2-player are really crazy. Not crazy different, but they're different enough because I don't run Burning Brand in the deck solo because I don't have immediate access to lore, and I'd rather do other things with the lore resources than to play Burning Brand. So to have this canceling shadow effects and feed the machine is just, that's why it's so good. But you playing two-handed, and you do have, I'm sure we'll talk about it when the playthroughs come out for the video, or for the deck. But I mean, this is exactly what we have going on here.
I mean, I'm not saying I haven't used Quicker Than Sight in the deck. Before my partner got a Burning Brand in a Song of Wisdom on Thranduil,
Mm-hmm.
I used Quicker Than Sight twice. Once to cancel a shadow effect dealt at me, which would have done 2 damage to all my allies.
Oh, so
which
horrible.
was 2 damage to all my characters. Sorry, that was all my ones.
Right.
And then the second one was an extra attack to be made against my partner who couldn't defend it. So I was able to use it then. I do see the need of this card. But again, that comes down to knowing the encounter deck.
Right.
And knowing what you're going up against and if you need that. In solo, definitely run it. In multiplayer, unless you're running, you know what your second deck is running and whether or not it can cancel shadow effects reliably. This is definitely a must-need in a Sylvan deck.
Yeah, so should we ring this card?
I just want to talk about that off for a minute. He's got the arrow through his elbow, and it looks like the sword is coming down at a perpendicular angle that's going to either skewer him through the arm and then through the leg.
Right.
It doesn't look possible for that to be in that hand and come down at that angle.
Right? It's pretty crazy.
Just a bit. But yes, as for ringing him,
So let's talk a little bit about this. So ringing, when we ring this guy, I think you and I decided that we were going to ring them in 2 ways. First, against the whole card pool, like we do normally, but then as a card within the deck and how it works within the deck. So, Grant, what do you think? What's your ring rating?
against the whole card pool, I'd bring it in 8. There's better ways of cancelling shadow effects more reliably. There are situations, if you have Sylvans in play and you got this in your hand just as an emergency, just in case you can't, you get that extra attack that need to be made, or you've got that hero does not counter defense, and it's going to kill one of your heroes. Yes, I can see it being used, but in the Sylvan deck, I'd rate it a 2 on 2 player and a 1 on.
You with all your
single.
Conditions. It's like what? It's like you have halves now. You're like, in 2-player it's 2, and then 1 player it's 1.
I am rating it overall as a 2 because of the fact that I play predominantly 2-player.
Right, I know.
But if I was playing solo, it'd be a 1 in this deck. But I don't play solo.
Right.
Just for me, it's not as fun. But That's my ratings.
Right.
David, what are your ratings?
Yeah, and I agree with you. It seems like I'm a little more extreme on the other end against the whole card pool. Like, this card has, to me, just seems useless outside of this sort of deck. And so only because it does have a use within this particular deck do I give it a 9. But other than that, you're not going to run this card except in this deck. You know, like you said, there, you know, you have Hasty Stroke and you have ways to cancel shadow effects that just make more sense in general ways. Maybe, just maybe, you're running, again, Nath Guide seems to be the most kind of general purpose cheap Sylvan that you may want to run in a deck because it can because of its, maybe the Weaver, yeah, maybe. And so maybe you include, but then you're talking about either of those cards, you're talking about something that's not in Sphere.
Yes, it is. The Weaver's in Sphere for Quicker Than Sight.
Quicker Than Strike is a
Spirit
Spirit and the Weaver. I'm thinking Minstrel. Sorry. I was going nuts there for a second. But you know, so yeah, I mean, but I just don't see
situational. I agree.
It's too corner case to give it anything in my mind better than a 9. So it's going to get a 9. And then I think because I'm playing solo, and I think that this deck was kind of designed with solo play in mind, at least from my point of view, I have to give it a 1 because it does something that nothing else does in the deck, and you kind of need to have it because of that lousy shadow effect that you know that the encounter deck has to have. So join us next time as we talk about more cards. And Grant, of course, is going to just be along for the ride, as he always is. So have a great day, everybody. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username Card Talk 2018. Or you can search the RSS feed cardtalk2018.libsyn.org for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at Card Talk 2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.